Today in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to make sweet Easter bread. This was a popular bread for Easter, and the batch I'm going to make will give you two small Easter breads. These are about 10 inches around, or one of these large Easter breads. You can make either one or the other. You'll need a couple hard-boiled eggs, and then all the basic ingredients are going to be right on this recipe card, and we'll put that on the screen for you while I measure up my ingredients, and I'll be right back. I've measured up all my ingredients, and about the flavors, if you have trouble finding orange flavor, you could probably use a little bit of orange zest. You could make that yourself. And if you have trouble finding rum flavor, you could probably use actually a splash of real rum. That would give you some flavor. But these flavors are not that expensive. You can find them at most grocery stores. Also, the recipe calls for egg yolks, so I'll just show you really quick how I separate my egg yolks. There's a lot of different ways that people do it. Chefs and cooks do it. But I just like to put my eggs into a bowl and use a spoon to lift out the yolks. And then I'm going to place all of these ingredients into the bowl, and I'm going to start this mix up. I've also warmed up this milk because it's a little bit cold in my kitchen, and this recipe needs to be kept warm to make this yeast rise well. So I'm just going to place everything into the bowl, and I'll be right back when I get this mix started. I've placed all the ingredients in the bowl, and I'm going to start this mixer up. This is going to pull together into a kind of a soft dough, and after it's mixed up into a dough, we're going to let the machine run for 10 minutes before we shut it off, because we have to really develop some elasticity to this dough. So I'm going to let this run for 10 minutes, and I'll see you when we get back. So this dough has been mixing for about 10 minutes, and it's ready. I'm going to just shut it off. First, I'm going to put a splash of oil in there. That just helps the dough prevent it from sticking to the bowl. Going to take this out, and I think I'm just going to leave the dough hook right in it, but I'm going to cover this with plastic. We're going to let this sit now for 30 minutes. We'll come back in 30 minutes and I'll show you how to portion it out. So this dough is set for 30 minutes now. I'm going to portion it out and show you what the next step is going to be. It's going to be very easy. We just want to portion this into 6 roughly even pieces, and then we're going to roll them up into a little shape. So to do 6 even pieces, I'm just going to cut it in half. Then each one, I'm just going to cut each one of those into a third. If they're not perfect, it doesn't matter. We can even them out later if we need to. We could just add a little piece, take a little piece of a large one and put it onto a small one if we want. For now, we're going to roll these up, and we're going to just take these and roll them almost like you're rolling up a piece of paper. Let me show you on a piece of paper. If you can imagine taking a piece of paper and just twirling it up like that, we're going to do the same thing with the dough, and we're going to put it aside. So first, just flatten it out a little bit. Start at one end and roll it up. I'm making these into just basically the shape of a hot dog bun. 3 tubes of dough. That's going to be 1 loaf. And then this is going to be the other loaf. So we're going to make 2 of the braided sweet Easter bread wreaths out of these. And then if you were going to make the large one, you could do the same thing, only divide it into 3 portions instead of 6. I'm going to cover this with plastic, and we're going to let this rest on the tray for 15 minutes. When I come back, I'll show you what the next step is going to be. This dough has rested now for 15 minutes. And now the next step is just simply to roll these out, which will really not take very long at all. I'm just going to take 1 piece of dough and roll it out, and I'm going to put it right back onto the same tray with a little bit of flour to keep it from sticking on the table. And we're going to place them right onto the tray. And I'm going to do that with all 6 of these. And I'll be back in a minute. I'm at the last one. These are all rolled out. I'm going to place this on the tray. Just going to cover this with plastic again to prevent it from drying out. I'm going to let these rest for another 15 minutes, and we'll go to the next step. These have rested for another 15 minutes, and they're ready for the next step, which is just to roll them out a little bit longer. I'm going to try to get these to be about 32 inches now. And they're too long to put on the tray, so I'm just going to leave them right on the work table. I'll cover them with plastic and then measure this one to see how long it is. And I think I need to go a little bit longer on that. So that's about 30 inches. And I'll just roll the rest of these all out until they're all the same length. I have these all rolled out now. I'm just going to cover these with plastic. And we're going to let these sit for about another 10 or 15 minutes. And the next step is going to be to braid them up. Now these are ready to braid. I'm going to uncover them and I'm going to braid these. To braid these long pieces, it's hard to start at one end or the other, so we like to start in the middle. So you start in the middle and you just overlap each one. Braid it all the way down, not too tight. Then we have to turn it over and start at the other end, but you have to make sure that it's upside down from the position that it was in when we first started. So that's one. I'm going to let this stay on the bench. I'm going to show you one more. Started in the middle. And I think what I'm going to do, just to show you, is that you flip this over, then you go to the other side, and you can resume the braid from the other side. If you don't flip it over, the braid won't come out right. So those are braided up, and now we're going to let these sit. I'm going to cover these with plastic again. I'm going to let these sit for just a few minutes before we make them into a circle, because the dough is a little bit tight from braiding it, so it has to rest just a little bit more. Be back in 5 minutes. These have rested for a few minutes, and now all we have to do is make them into a circle. Just join the ends, just kind of pinch the dough down a little bit. And I'm going to place this onto a sheet pan. I'm using a pan liner, a paper, but if you wanted to, you could also just oil your pan with a little bit of vegetable oil. I'm going to do the second one. Now these are going to need to rise, and I really don't know how long it's going to take for them to rise, and the rising time is always variable. It depends on temperature. If your home is warm, it's going to rise fast, maybe about an hour, maybe even less. If your home is not that warm, it might take a little bit longer, but you could always speed up the process by trying to put them in a warm location. Some people have a setting on their oven that's called bread proofing. It brings your oven temperature up to just 100 degrees, and you could place them in the oven just to keep them warm, just to warm them up and take them out, and set them aside while you then preheat your oven. They should be covered with plastic so that they don't dry out. So I'm going to cover these up, and we'll let these rise, and then I'll show you how I place them in the oven. I've let these rise for about an hour. I got them to rise pretty quickly because I placed some warm sheet pans underneath them, which helped warm it up and make them rise faster. So I made a little bit of egg wash, which is just like making scrambled eggs. It's just an egg with some salt and a splash of milk. I'm going to brush these gently. This dough is not quite double in size from when we started, but almost. About a 3/4 proof is all these need. The oven is preheated to 375 degrees. Also, if you wanted to make these up one day and then bake them the next day, you could put these into the refrigerator and hold them overnight and then let them rise the next morning or next day, and you could bake them the next day. I'm going to place an egg on these, but the eggs are optional. They're decorative. If you don't want to put an egg on it, you certainly don't have to. I'm going to put these in my oven, one on each shelf. I'm going to bake these for 8 minutes and then come back and rotate them, switch positions, and then they're going to bake for another 8 minutes and they'll be ready. So I baked them for 8 minutes, switched positions, and baked them for another 8 minutes. And as you can see, they've colored up nicely and these are ready to come out. They look like they're a little bit light in color, but this recipe likes to be baked lightly. If they bake dark, it tends to be a little bit dry. So the softer, lighter bake is better for this. I'm brushing these. I didn't have any honey, so I'm brushing them with a little bit of maple syrup. I just microwaved a little bit of maple syrup, brushing it on just to give them a little bit of shine. Oh, the maple syrup smells really good for these too. These breads smell really good with the rum flavor, the orange flavor, and now this maple syrup on top. Boy, they really look nice. So that's it. Those are ready. It took a few hours to get these from start to finish, but the actual amount of time spent working on them was really only about 15 minutes. It's a lot of waiting for the dough to rest, waiting for it to rise, waiting for them to bake. But those are ready, and there's your sweet Easter breads. Give it a try, and I hope you enjoy it and have fun making them.